Although every nation confronted the Great Depression in its own way, governments around the world shared the same basic objectives: relieving human suffering and restoring economic stability. To achieve these goals, many countries adopted similar policies, including raising tariffs, restricting international trade, expanding government regulation of the economy, and creating public works programs to provide jobs for the unemployed. These measures marked a significant departure from traditional free market principles and reflected a broader movement toward greater government involvement in economic affairs, a trend that had not been seen on such a scale since World War I. During the Great Depression, many countries sought to protect their domestic economies by raising tariffs, restricting imports, imposing controls on foreign trade, and moving away from traditional free market policies. These actions contributed to a worldwide surge in economic nationalism as governments attempted to shield their industries from foreign competition and preserve jobs for their citizens. Leaders encouraged consumers to purchase domestically produced goods, believing that keeping money within national borders would help stimulate economic recovery and reduce unemployment. While these policies were intended to strengthen national economies, they often reduced international trade and deepened the global economic crisis. In the United States, this same spirit of economic protection and government intervention led to a series of major financial reforms designed to restore public confidence and prevent another economic collapse. The federal government enacted sweeping banking regulations, strengthened insurance protections, and established strict oversight of the stock market. Two of the most significant agencies created during this period were the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC, and the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC. The FDIC guaranteed bank deposits, helping to prevent the bank runs that had devastated the financial system during the early years of the Depression. The SEC was created to regulate Wall Street, enforce transparency in financial markets, and curb the reckless speculation that had contributed to the stock market crash of 1929. Together, these reforms fundamentally reshaped the American financial system and continue to play a central role in regulating banking and investment activities today. Across the world, governments responded to the Great Depression by funding large public works projects designed to create jobs and stimulate economic activity. In the United States, President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal introduced a wide range of programs aimed at providing relief, recovery, and reform. One of the largest was the Works Progress Administration, WPA, which employed millions of Americans building roads, schools, libraries, bridges, and other public facilities. The WPA also supported writers, artists, actors, and musicians, funding cultural projects that preserved oral histories and enriched public life. Another major program was the Civilian Conservation Corps, CCC, which hired young men to plant trees, fight forest fires, build parks, and conserve natural resources. The CCC not only reduced unemployment, but also helped protect and improve the nation's environment. The Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA, focused on regional development by constructing dams throughout the Tennessee Valley, controlling floods, generating hydroelectric power, expanding irrigation, and bringing electricity to rural communities. These improvements modernized one of the country's poorest regions and promoted long-term economic growth. Perhaps the most enduring legacy of the New Deal was the creation of Social Security in 1935. This program provided financial assistance to the elderly, disabled individuals, and unemployed workers, offering a safety net during times of economic hardship. By helping vulnerable Americans meet their basic needs, Social Security reduced poverty, prevented starvation, and kept money circulating through the economy during downturns. More than any other New Deal initiative, it transformed the relationship between citizens and the federal government and remains one of the most significant and influential social welfare programs in American history. Although the United States devoted significant resources to public works programs, no country pursued job creation on a larger scale than Germany under Adolf Hitler. After coming to power in 1933, Hitler's government launched extensive public construction projects, the most famous being the Autobahn highway network, which provided employment for thousands of workers. At the same time, the Nazi regime dramatically expanded military spending and rearmament programs, creating millions of jobs in factories, construction, and the armed forces. Unemployment statistics also fell because Nazi policies pushed many women out of certain occupations and systematically excluded Jews from professional and economic life, reducing the number of people officially counted in the workforce. As a result, Germany's unemployment rate fell from approximately 30% in 1932 to virtually zero by 1939. This dramatic reduction in joblessness helped make Hitler highly popular among many Germans who had suffered through the hardships of the Great Depression. However, Germany's economic recovery was not based on sustainable growth alone. It depended heavily on government spending, military expansion, political repression, and preparations for war. By the late 1930s, the German economy was increasingly geared toward mobilization for the conflict that would become World War II. The Great Depression did more than devastate economies, it also undermined public confidence in democratic government. As unemployment soared, businesses failed, and living standards declined, many people came to believe that democratic systems were too slow, divided, and ineffective to address the crisis. In response, increasing numbers of citizens turned to strong leaders who promised stability, national renewal, and decisive action, even if achieving those goals required limiting political freedoms and weakening constitutional government. This shift had dramatic political consequences across Europe. In 1920, most countries east of the Rhine River operated as democracies. By 1938, however, Czechoslovakia was the only democracy that remained in the region. Elsewhere, democratic governments had been replaced by authoritarian, fascist, or military regimes that concentrated power in the hands of a single leader or ruling party. While the Great Depression did not by itself create these dictatorships, it provided fertile ground for their rise by destroying economic security, fueling social unrest, and eroding faith in democratic institutions. As a result, many people became willing to trade political liberty for promises of economic recovery and national strength, helping pave the way for the authoritarian movements that would dominate much of Europe by the late 1930s. Beyond its economic and political consequences, the Great Depression left deep psychological scars on millions of people around the world. Families lost jobs, homes, savings, and businesses, while many farmers saw years of hard work disappear as markets collapsed. For countless individuals, unemployment was not a temporary setback, but a prolonged and painful experience that lasted for years. The constant uncertainty and financial hardship created feelings of fear, anxiety, and hopelessness that persisted long after economic conditions began to improve. People responded to these hardships in different ways. Some became permanently cautious about spending and saving, carrying a lifelong fear of economic instability. Others searched for someone to blame for their suffering, often directing their anger toward groups they already distrusted. In Germany, economic hardship contributed to a dramatic rise in anti-Semitism. Many people falsely associated Jews with banking and finance and blamed them for the economic crisis, despite there being no factual basis for such claims. Nazi leaders exploited these prejudices, using propaganda to spread hatred and scapegoat Jews for Germany's problems. This campaign of discrimination and intolerance eventually culminated in some of the worst atrocities of the 20th century. Anti-Semitic attitudes also increased in other countries, including the United States, during the 1930s, as economic anxieties fueled social tensions and prejudice. The Great Depression therefore affected far more than financial markets and government policies. It transformed the way people viewed their future, their governments, and one another, placing enormous strain on societies at every level: economic, political, and emotional.